Would you rather be the most aligned version of you and lonely, or more misaligned and surrounded by a bunch of people? Growth is a really good suggestion that you're on the right path towards something. And sometimes it's better to be that than it is to just be surrounded by noise. Or surrounded with noise.
Are you someone who has been really concerned with not belonging and deeply fearful of being alone? If that's the case, you probably are being held back by your peers, at least on some level. Because you're afraid to sail away. You're afraid to live in Delaware. You're afraid to whatever that job opportunity is.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode number 1675, Is All Judgment Bad? Today, for episode number 1676, Is Loneliness Necessary When You're Growing? We're asking a lot of questions this week. My apologies for asking so many darn questions.
That's the way. That's the
Sometimes.
hyper-conscious way. Questions
Change the way
are the
you
answer.
think, change the way you act, change the way you live.
Change the questions you ask, change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live.
That wasn't the slogan.
I know, but it's too long. That's
You
what we
can't
did on the
change
Hyperconscious podcast, though.
You can't change the slogan. We already did. We already went through this. What was we talked about something recently? Oh yeah, catchphrases. You can only have one slogan. You can only have one catchphrase. To infinity and beyond. Buzz Lightyear.
What's your catchphrase?
What is my catchphrase? Probably. Don't let that bother you. That's one. Yeah, I'd say that's the number one.
Nice.
What's yours?
Statistically speaking.
Yeah. It's that, or I think what would be optimal is.
Yeah.
It's one of those two. All right. Is loneliness necessary when you're growing? I was thinking of this. Alan and I were thinking of episodes. He went to let the creatures out, and I was thinking, what would be a good episode?
Hey, how dare you? Creatures.
What? They are creatures.
Put some
We're all
respect
creatures.
on it.
We're all creatures.
Tucker, Tauriel. It's Bush, Tucker, Wolf. Tauriel. Madame Tauriel de Fari.
You think I'm going to remember that?
And Tiger Nala Lily. You gotta put some respect on it.
Look, I can barely remember your name sometimes. I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. In your defense, it's
a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
Bush, Tucker, Wolf.
Are they looking over kingdoms?
Yes.
Are they reigning over kingdoms? I got
For
Fudge
sure.
and Ace. Simple.
That's
Fudge
how
and Ace.
different you and I are right there.
Fudge is a food, a piece of chocolate, and Ace is a card.
You can do Tucker Tilly Tau if you want.
Tucker Tilly
You call
Tau.
them creatures. What are we doing here, man?
Creatures, that's respect. I mean that with the utmost respect. You're a creature. How do you feel about that?
I'm all right with it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not a judgment. So you need to sit down.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. All right.
I tell you to sit down, but your chair doesn't work.
Oh, how dare he? I'm already sitting down. The problem is I might not be sitting down for long. My legs might come up over my head because my chair is trying to eject me out the window.
For the listeners, please, if you like the chair jokes, post in Next Level Nation, and let's all join in whether or not let's vote on whether or not we keep this chair.
I'm going to start a GoFundMe in Next Level Nation for a new chair for Kevin. All right. Is loneliness necessary when you're growing? You said yes. I say no. Tomorrow for episode number 1677, it's going to be Freestyle Friday. We hope you have a great day and a great evening. I don't know. I would say unless you are so blessed to have very, very aligned, growth-minded people around you that have similar core values, core beliefs, and core aspirations, you're going to feel some level of lonely. And I do think loneliness, part of where loneliness comes from is the vulnerability to share how you're feeling. Because you might just think you're the only one dealing with a certain issue. Mm-hmm. And that might feel lonely to you. And in reality, you just haven't had the vulnerability, the courage, the opportunity, the necessity, whatever, to say, hey, Alan, hey, Kev, hey, Brittany, hey, whatever. I was hoping I could talk to you about something. kind of going through something, and I was wondering if I could, run some things by you.
I have a story.
Please.
Way back when I think that kids are unintentionally cruel to each other. You ever observed kids playing?
Oh, yeah.
Picture like 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, like that age. And they call each other names. It's brutal.
Mm.
When we were little kids, I don't know what age. I want to say 12, 13, 11. A couple young boys. Me and my group of friends. We were riding our bikes. And one of my friends made the mistake of somehow saying something about how one time he was afraid to crap himself. I know it's a weird story. He was afraid to crap himself, and he ended up just going in a river and just using his hand.
Okay.
And yeah, I know it's weird. I'll make a point. I promise.
When you first started the story, did you know this is where I was going to get to?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm just trying to be more me, Kev.
Okay.
This is gonna make a point. I promise. We called him. And I want to say we. I wasn't really in this, but I did unfortunately participate. Okay, but I didn't start it. He got called Pooh Hand for the longest time. I'm talking like years.
Yeah, it does. It never really goes away.
Years and years. And here's the thing, right? And I know that's funny, and it's supposed to be funny, but it also is why we're all so scared to be vulnerable, and that's why we feel alone. I do think that growing is super lonely because I came to this distinction. Maybe we do an episode at some point, Kev. I'll talk to you about it. But
talk to me.
I realized that growing up, I had no problem. I was on a podcast recently, and I talked about the difference between improvement toward achievement and then like self-improvement. And I wrote a blog recently. It's blog number 16. We'll put the link in the show notes. It's all about self-improvement. I wasn't self-improvement oriented, but I was very improvement oriented. So after 26, after my car accident, I had a quarter-life crisis. Kevin did as well with suicidal ideation. That's the shortest possible version I can give for the new listeners. But essentially what happened is, for me anyways, is I was achievement-oriented and I was improvement-oriented. So everything I did, I always wanted to improve at basketball. I always wanted to improve at video games. I always wanted to improve at academics. I always wanted to improve toward my goals and dreams, my career, my resume, my cover letter, all this stuff. I improved my LinkedIn, What I was so improvement oriented, which some people think is growth. Some people think that's a growth mindset, and it kind of is. I had a huge distinction recently, and maybe this is silly, but it was like, whoa, I wasn't self-improvement oriented. That's all it was. Go ahead.
I was gonna say we did an episode on that.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember.
I don't think I did, but I didn't know when this happened, but it's very clear to me now. I've been observing everyone. Some people can take feedback. If they're painting, I remember I painted up in Maine for a time, and I got feedback on my painting and whether or not I did it well and how to get better. Some people are good at taking feedback when it comes to painting or a craft or building a house or doing carpentry or whatever, you name it. But they're very bad at taking self-feedback. I didn't start taking self-feedback super well until after 26. And I don't think I was particularly statistically bad at taking self-feedback, but I definitely wasn't great at it. And to bring this full circle, one of the reasons why it was so cruel that he got called Pooh Hand is because, I know it's so hard for us not to laugh. It's just so bad. But here's the thing. The reason why we don't want to be vulnerable is because when we were vulnerable and we said something stupid, we got so attacked for it. We got made fun of for it.
Not even stupid though. Like I think that's a reframe. It's you said something that was outside the realm of normalcy for other people, maybe.
And then kids, what do? They grab that one thing you said and they just rib you for it. They just consistently make fun of you. That's what it is. I'm convinced that being made fun of when we're younger, whatever you got made. So everyone out there listening, I found this to be gold in coaching. I want you to try to go into your past when you were a kid. What did you get made fun of for? Whatever you got made fun of for by your parents or your aunts and uncles or your friends or your extended family or your colleagues or coworkers or teachers. Think of times of embarrassment where you were made fun of. That's where shame lives. and there's a lot of research on this too. I'm not just talking. Shame lives where you got made fun of. And whatever you got made fun of for, it creates what's called an exile, and you just basically are hiding it all the time without even knowing it. This is unconscious conditioning. And so, to your point, Kev, of is growth lonely? That's why. Not a lot of people want to look at that. Not a lot of people have the courage, the humility, and the vulnerability to say, I don't think I'm smart enough. That's not mine, so I probably shouldn't use that example. But it's very hard to put yourself out there because you got so made fun of in the past. Because it feels like you're still going to get made fun of, and maybe you will around certain people, quite frankly. But bullies mess us up. I always wondered why I hated bullies so much. Now I know why. It holds us back. I'm convinced bullies hold people back more than any other single thing. Because they make fun of you for who you are, and then you basically spend the rest of your life running from who you are. And I don't want that for anybody. So I didn't mean to go off on some crazy side tangent, but it triggered in me when you were talking, Kevin. It is lonely. Personal growth is lonely because you might be one of the only people who's willing to look in that deep, deep, deep mirror and overcome those deep exiles.
I've told this story before. And again, it wasn't a big deal for me because I was kind of used to stuff like this. But I was in Maine with some friends of mine, and we were out sitting on the dock, partaking in a joint, a marijuana cigarette. And we were looking up at the sky, and it was beautiful. And I said, "Isn't it weird?" I did the thing I do. Isn't it weird that we're on a rock spinning through the universe, and nobody ever thinks of that? Like, we're all thinking of this moment when this doesn't matter, really, in the grand scheme of things. And if gravity ever decided to take a day off, we'd float off into space and perish. And everybody just laughed at me. But I had a moment of, well, I've been doing more growth in philosophy, for a lack of better phrasing. Maybe that's why I'm weird in this situation. I don't know. I like that. I like that about myself. That's something I'm proud of. I'm proud of being weird.
That's the opposite of shame.
Yeah.
The way you reacted to that was so positive.
I think I'm somewhat used to it. I now reflecting on my life has been very, very lonely because I've been doing things very different than everybody else for most of my life. I'll never forget when I was working at the hospital. I was working 11 to 7, and I'd work, I think it was like Monday through Friday, but I'd have like every other Friday off or something. So like sometimes I'd have weekends. But all my other friends were like at college, I think. And here I am like working a real job, for lack of better phrasing, and making my own money and trying to save and all that stuff. And like it was a really important, it's not going to sound like it because I probably don't seem that responsible as a human being now, but it was a very important time for me and my responsibility. I had to be at work at 11 o'clock. I'd work till 7. I still wanted to exercise. I still wanted to go for walks. I remember I used to work 11 to 7, and then I used to go to, what was the golf course on that big hill in Douglas? Blissful Meadows? Or is that the one near you? Edgewood.
Yeah.
Edgewood. I would literally go straight from the hospital. I would rent a cart, and I would play golf by myself at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was the only person on the
Really?
golf course. Yeah. I did that for a while. There was a season of my life where
I
would go straight
Why?
and play golf. I liked it. I liked it.
Hit a quick 9?
I would play 18.
By yourself?
Yeah, I'd play 18 by myself.
Good for you, man.
I didn't want to go home.
I'm not laughing making fun of you. I'm laughing because that's very unique.
I didn't want to go. What am I going to do? I'm going to go home and I've just worked all night. I'm supposed to go to sleep. I don't want to go home and go to sleep at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Were you any good?
At golf? No.
Is that why you played alone?
No. So this is a funny story. My uncle Chuck, rest in peace, Uncle Chuck. Him, myself, and one of my buddies went golfing one time, and I think we were on like the 3rd hole, and I said, honestly, F it, I'm leaving. I'm taking off. And my friend was like, dude, you can't leave me here with him. And I said, you can leave with me if you want, or you can stay. I'm taking off. I ain't playing golf anymore. I'm done. And he stayed. I think he actually stayed and played with my uncle. Because my uncle was better than me, and he was better than me too. But that was when I was working at the hospital, dude, that was brutal. I felt so alone because I'm on in the opposite schedule of everybody I know. At that time, was I like super single? Yeah, I was super single at that time. Fitness, I was still doing fitness, but I felt super alone. I think the hard part about growth is usually growth is not in the same exact trajectory. So even if somebody is growing at the same rate as you, they're growing in a different way than you.
Yeah, different direction potentially.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like when I was growing and making a bunch of money, I'm sure I felt lonely in that, but maybe I didn't feel lonely in other ways. I was so lonely physically because I lived so far away from everybody, but emotionally too. I remember I would get home, same thing. I would get home from work. I wouldn't even go home. I'd go to the gym. I would go to the gym at like 2 o'clock in the morning after a 7-hour ride from New Jersey and an 8-hour workday. I would just go to the gym because I didn't want to go home and go to sleep. I remember walking. It was the worst. So I was gone for a week at a time. So I'd usually even in the winter, I would just set the heat at like 65 or 60. I'm not going to be here. I don't care. And I don't know if I'll ever forget the feeling of walking in and just, it was freezing and it was so quiet. Just like the silence and energetic silence too. There's just nothing there. It's just super quiet. Not another soul there. Brutal. It was brutal. I'll never forget that. I'll never, ever, ever forget that. Ever.
What did you learn from that?
I think I created most of my loneliness.
Out of fear or... Because I manufactured so much belonging. I didn't even mean to. I didn't know that I was doing that, but I've never really felt super lonely.
I don't think I care about belonging.
Not as much as other people, that's for sure. But that's like your core wound is different. I think your core wound
I think that's the thing. Like,
not
of course,
smart enough, not capable enough. I think
of course I experienced loneliness. It's not something that my eyes were. I wasn't really focused on not being lonely. I think there was a part of me that kind of liked it.
Agreed. That's why you keep attracting it. That's like so interesting. That's why no one goes and golfs alone. I'm not making that wrong. Nobody does that. All the time. It's not common. That's not normal. Not at 7 o'clock in the morning, man. I'm not making that wrong.
No,
genuinely.
I know.
This is the lesson instead of me just poking at Kev. The lesson in this, I think, is the stuff that's weird about you is what's unique about you. There's data there. You never told me that story before.
I got lots of stories.
If you had told me that, I would have analyzed it upside down and sideways, and we would have figured out something about you.
That's probably what I didn't tell you.
And most likely, yeah. Freudian analysis. The truth of the matter is everything that's weird about you that you're hiding is connected to what's unique about you that you've probably been made fun of, or you think it's weird, or you think it's wrong. And what if it's not? What if it's not weird or wrong? I built my own computer when I was 13. I never used to talk about that. I know every part of this computer. Like, I know how to build it.
What do you think that is? You think it's weird?
I think you trigger other people's insecurities. Maybe it's weird. Maybe they're not interested.
What do you think? What do you think it is? Like, regardless, outside...
For me or for you? I'm confused.
For you. What do you think it is? Do you think it's weird? Do you think it's awesome? Do you think it's unique? Like, what do you think that is?
I think it's awesome.
What are you afraid other people would think? What were you afraid? I won't suggest that you still are.
I don't know. I would say it just isn't something that builds belonging. So I probably just didn't, unless I was with a computer engineer.
Yeah.
Like, I built a computer in college with some of my college roommates. They're the techiest, geekiest people you can imagine. I mean, and I loved it. I used to literally drink with them and then get them debating with each other so I could learn. It was the best. I loved it. I would just ask them questions and just like sit back and debate. And I learned so much in college because these are like, take the smartest people you've ever met and then get them to debate each other while drinking. I mean, you want to have a good time. That's I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know, if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes. I remember in college, I'll be brief about this, but I went to college and I was the math and science guy in high school, straight A's, blah, blah, blah. And then I went to college, and I got the physics award in high school. So go me, right? Awesome. And then I got to college, and we finish in 2 weeks what we did all year in high school. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is a different game. This is a different level. It's kind of like if you playing in the minor leagues in baseball, and then you go up to the major leagues, and there's a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, and you're like, I am screwed. I'm screwed. I'm going to say it. I'm fucked. So I'm sorry if any kids are out there. My apologies. That I know a lot of our listeners have kids in the car. I'm so sorry. Here's the thing. I had that moment of, I'm going to lose all my scholarships. I'm going to lose all my financial aid. Like, I need to find the smartest humans I can find, and I need to squat up. I need to squat up with the most brilliant humans I can find, because the computer engineering was so ridiculously difficult. Like, Worcester Polytechnic Institute is one of the best technical colleges in the world. It was so alarmingly challenging. I mean, signal analysis, these courses were effing brutal. Now, I'm also really smart. I was the guy who could party all night and get straight A's in calculus. So I'm playing with a very high ability in this area. And I was still like, what in the F, right? Granted, I partied in college. If I had the habits I had now, I don't think college would have been that difficult, quite frankly. But I was, again, more friends, more fun. And so I found the smartest kids I could find. I taught them how to party, and they taught me how to study. Because in high school, I didn't have to study. I just kind of could win without trying that hard, and rest on my laurels a little bit. And I say that tongue in cheek, because I do think I tried a little harder than most. But truth be told, it did come easy. Fast forward, what's the point of that whole story? You do hide the things that are unique out of want for belonging. I think that you did something different, Kev. You were like, I want to be unique. I want to be a fighter when no one else wants to fight. I want to be a podcaster because that seems unique. I don't want to go to college because everyone else is going. I want to go and travel instead of what everyone else is doing. I think you've always wanted to be unique.
Well, I think I wanted significance. That's one way to get significance. I think a lot of people just get significance. It gives negative significance.
Yeah. I think in some ways maybe you were super relatable naturally, so you wanted to be unique. I was super unique naturally, and I wanted to be relatable. And I think we're finally at a place now where we're going to be our true selves.
Yeah.
At least to a more extent than before.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's less lonely.
Definitely.
I think it's less lonely.
But I also wonder, how do you create less loneliness while alone? If you can be alone and not feel lonely, I feel like everything else is gravy. I feel like that's where personal development. I remember one time I had a friend who said personal development is personal. And as silly as that sounds, it's so profound. It's you and you. And if you don't have that dark time of loneliness, it's going to be really difficult for you to find out who you really are. And some of us are so distracted all the time. We just don't.
I don't know if I have a good answer, because I've been with you the whole time. So I don't know. I haven't really had to be alone.
But you used to be alone all the time. You spent a lot of your life alone.
My growth was different. It was like, I felt like when I got the job that facilitated me making good money, I felt like a man for the first time ever. I was like, I'm a grown man. Like, I have my own place, I have my own car, I pay all my own bills. I'm like responsible for me. I see my family like once every couple months, maybe. In the height of my travel, I would pretty much only see my family on holidays. So I might see them 3 or 4 times a year. It was like, I'm a man. But I don't know. I was so attached to my goals that I was okay with sacrificing whatever that meant. When I hit the initial rock bottom, my partner left me. I was broke. I was lonely. I remember thinking, well, this is the time for me to go accomplish something. And what I want to accomplish is I want to make as much money, the most money I've ever made in my entire life. That's what I want to do. Because I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here where I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I don't want to be here. If something happens to my car, I can't afford to get it fixed. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do that. So I felt like I was probably most attached to the goal. So it didn't feel as lonely.
Was that the first time you had that goal orientation like that?
Yeah.
Ever since then, you've had a lot of goal orientation. I was the opposite. It was like, for me, I was always goal oriented, and then I had to flip the script and figure out who I was.
I never felt like I had the opportunity to accomplish goals. I say it jokingly. I was lucky to get that job. I didn't get that job based on qualification. I didn't get that job based on anything. This is what happened. Quick, before we go. I was dating... Okay, so I was a forklift operator and a truck driver. Okay? I worked for my uncle. I was talking to one of the guys I worked with, Lance, and he's like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do with your future? And I was like, I want to be a firefighter. I feel like that'd be awesome. That would be super cool. You watch TV and you see firefighters and paramedics, and they just seem like so competent. They can do anything. I want to do that. And he's like, well, you got to get on a volunteer squad. And I was like, all right, let me see what that entails. So I went to Uxbridge. I went to the fire station. I said, hey, how do I do this volunteer thing? And they said, we actually have there's a training coming up in the next couple months, and we're taking people. And I was like, all right, cool, I'm in. And I went to my job, and I said, hey, I need to be off early Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I can't work Saturdays because it's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And they said, cool, too bad, not going to happen. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, I quit, and I'm going to go do this. And they said, you're going to quit without a job? And I said, I do it all the time. Yeah, I do it all the time. Yeah, I'm going to be fine. We'll figure it out. So then I ended up going to the fire academy.
The kid who has no self-belief has sneaky self-belief. It's
I
so
guess,
weird.
I just don't.
Either
I don't
that
like
or you're
people,
reckless.
I don't like people telling me what to do. It bothers me.
Yeah,
it bothers me. When people tell me I can't live my life the way, like, I can't get out of work early. I want to be a firefighter. And you can't just let me get off work early for 3 months. I'm trying to, like, better my life and better the community.
Yeah. It's bad leadership.
But I have to make my deliveries. You know, sorry for having to go. My bad. That's on me. I should have known better.
Well, you know what places like that do? They try to keep people where they are.
And again, it's a
pisses
business.
Me off.
I know.
No, it still pisses me off.
I know.
Straight
Same.
up.
So
yeah.
I left.
Good for you.
So I went to the fire academy. I worked with my buddy Zach, the big tattooed guy who's the scariest looking human but the nicest dude ever. I worked with him renovating a house, and then after that, I was getting ready to graduate the fire academy, and I had no work. And I had the realization at that time that there's no way I'm going to be a firefighter anytime soon. The list is so long.
Yeah.
Military and police get it first.
Yep.
This is like not going to happen most likely. The person I was dating at the time, her aunt worked. One of the things she did was she helped people get better opportunities for jobs. And there was this job fair going on in Framingham, Mass, which is like 45 minutes from where we lived, but that's the town I actually worked in at the time. When I was driving for the truck place, I worked in Framingham. That's where I worked. So I kind of knew Framingham pretty well. She said, you should talk to my aunt and see if there's anything you might be interested in this job fair. And I said, all right, let me see. I'll give it a shot.
How small did the world feel back then for you?
So small.
Isn't it so different now?
So small.
Wild.
Yeah, it was very much like whatever opportunity I get offered, that's the one I'll take. Most likely.
It's so different than what it is now.
It was brutal. I
mean, even you with Framingham. Sorry to interrupt you, but I knew Framingham. It's look at how much certainty.
Yeah,
there's such a pattern of you needed certainty.
That's what I knew.
Yeah, you're
that's
clinging
what I knew.
to certainty. Yeah.
So I went to this job fair, and I learned weatherization. And all I learned really was, as somebody who's doing weatherization, you seal up holes in homes, in the attics, in the basements. You keep the good air in, the bad air out. That was the simplest form. And they taught us how to use different stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. I get to the end of that training, and I go kind of do like my exit interview. And the lady said, we have someone we want to set you up with. It's like one of the best companies. You have a great personality. I think you're going to fit in perfectly. And I was like, all right, cool. And she said, there's only one downside. And I was like, of course there is. Of course there is. They're located in Boston, and it requires you to spend a lot of time on the road. And I said, I'm out. I'm not driving to Boston every day. And she said, you'll make anywhere from $40 to $60 an hour. And I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. I'm in, whatever. Part of me did not think this was ever going to happen. No, there's no chance this is going to happen. No, are you kidding me? I just came to this job fair for 2 weeks, learned a couple things and now I'm going to make $60 an hour. What do you think? I was born at night, but not last night. So I'll never forget.
For me.
I'll never forget. I was at the movies with one of my friends, and I was broke. I don't even know how I afford to go to the movies. I have no idea where the money came from. And my boss, my future boss, called me, and he said, "Hey, we're come in for an interview. I want to talk to you." I was like, "All right, cool." So I went and met my boss. I put on the finest khakis and button-up shirt I had. And he had me working. Like, I went, met him for like 10 minutes, and he had me like moving stuff around. He's like, "All right, man, I like you. You have a great personality. You're in. I'll call you when we're leaving. We have a job starting in Delaware in a couple of weeks. I'll call you." It's like, "All right, cool." So he called me a couple weeks later, and he said, "Hey, we're shipping out Friday or Saturday, whatever. Meet me at the office. Pack your suitcase. We'll be gone for a week." And I was like, "All right, cool." And I told my mom and grandmother, I was like, "I'm going to live in Delaware for a week." So we're going to kind of see how this plays out.
Go live in Delaware.
Yeah. So I drove, I think it was, I don't know, 8 hours, 10 hours with this guy that I've met this is the second time I've ever seen this person in person. And we drove to Delaware together. And then we rented a house as a company. And I moved into this house with like 7 other strangers I had never met. And then I proceeded to learn a job that I had never done. But I remember when I got my check for the first time, I'll never forget. I opened up the pay stub, and I think I was making $50 an hour because I was on probation because I was new, so I was making $10 an hour less than everybody else, and I was like, I just made $2,000 this week. It used to take me a month to make that. This can't be real. And then from there, it was like nothing else.
And
really
back
matters.
then, that's a lot more than now too.
Yeah, it was a ton.
Yeah,
it was a ton. So, long story short, I had no right getting that job. Really? I got lucky. I did. I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time with the right attitude. That is the one thing I'll give myself, is I had the right attitude.
Right place, right time, right attitude, right work ethic.
Yeah.
Show up on time. You came correct. There's other things too.
I know.
Right?
I know.
And now that you're a business owner, you know how challenging it is to find reliable people. You were reliable.
Yeah.
So that's
but
a big thing too.
All I'm saying with all that is it just, like, yeah, whatever, I'm in.
What does that have to do with loneliness?
I don't know.
No, I'm kidding.
No.
I was trying to circle it back, but I think we've lost.
No. To your point, I wasn't that lonely because I felt like I was actually chasing something for the first time ever.
Ian,
I felt
you weren't
like
that concerned about being lonely. That's another thing. I think you're right about belonging not matter that much.
I'd rather be successful than be surrounded by people who I just kind of get along with.
Yeah.
I don't require a lot of attention. I like 5 people, 3 people, 5 people. If I can have like 5 really close people, I think I'm just realistic in that.
It's good self-awareness. For all the listeners, to make this more relevant to all of you, are you someone who has been really concerned with not belonging and deeply fearful of being alone? If that's the case, you probably are being held back by your peers, at least on some level. Because you're afraid to sail away. You're afraid to live in Delaware. You're afraid to whatever that job opportunity is. Or are you on the other end where you don't mind being alone at all, but maybe you're not networking as much as you could or should, and putting yourself out there and participating in experiencing sports and sports teams and clubs and Toastmasters, whatever it is, so that's good self-awareness for everybody. And to answer the original question, my next level lesson is this: personal growth is personal and therefore lonely. Try to find other people on that journey and it will be less lonely. That's it.
Mine would be something I've said before. Would you rather be the most aligned version of you and lonely, or more misaligned and surrounded by a bunch of people? Growth is a really good suggestion that you're on the right path towards something.
Agreed.
And sometimes it's better to be that than it is to just be surrounded by noise or surrounded with noise. And I'm not saying that the people in your life are noise, but I do. I think a lot of us, we crave attention and we dress it up as love.
Yeah, or we crave attention at the expense of fulfillment.
Yeah. Deep one today.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to my story, everyone. I appreciate it very much.
It's funny, man.
Delaware. Who knew?
Hey, I'm going to go live in Delaware. Okay, good luck.
I might not even come. I don't even know. I might not even come back. I don't even know where I'm going. I have no idea what any of this is. You know what I mean? I'm sure my mom and grandmother thought I was crazy.
Of course.
I'm telling them I'm going to be making $50 an hour. There's no way they believe me. I was nuts. I may never come back. Next Level Nation, if you are looking for a place where you're not going to feel lonely in your growth, or I'll say you'll feel less lonely in your growth. I can't guarantee you won't feel any loneliness. Next Level Nation is all about that. That's why we have a Facebook group. The Facebook group originally started as a place that Alan and I would have enjoyed as people trying to grow and feeling like we didn't really fit in anywhere. So if you're interested, the link will be in the show notes, a safe place to be the authentic version of you.
100% no bullies allowed, and it is a safe space to be your own weird. Speaking of safe spaces to be weird, we are reading a book called The Psychology of Money. The Psychology of Money, I'm holding it up for those of you on YouTube, by Morgan Housel. It is the book that won the vote. There were 7 books. Thank you, everyone who voted. It won with 44% of the vote, which is pretty intense considering there was 7 books. Super excited for this. Kevin's read this book. This book is a very honest book. I always think, 0 to 10. On the 10 end, you've got an overly confident, overly fluffy, overly optimistic book that is motivating and inspiring, but sometimes it's a little bit, I don't know. And then the zeros are very pessimistic, dark, nothing's going to work out, overly pessimistic book. I would say this is a 4. Most self-improvement, personal development books are on the overconfident, everything's going to work out, you can manifest your dreams, like a little bit fluffy, feel good. This is going to be different, but it's not a bad thing. I think it's going to be a breath of fresh air for all of us to hear someone who's very honest about the data and who's very honest about the psychology of money and your relationship to it. So I hope you join book club. Click the link in the show notes. And we're doing 2 chapters per week. This Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the first 2 chapters.
Tomorrow, for episode number 1677, it is Freestyle Friday. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback on Freestyle Friday, so thank you to everyone who has given that feedback to us. I told Alan whenever we started, I said, I feel like we got to do something freestyle. You and I should just talk. We'll come with a thought and see what happens. And I am grateful that you're enjoying it out there because it's my favorite episode for sure of the week.
Some would say, Kev, that conversations change lives.
I've never heard anybody say that in my life. Mm-hmm. Never in my life have I even heard those words.
There was a podcast / YouTube channel one time.
I looked I looked. I couldn't find it on the podcast.
Called Conversations Change Lives.
I searched all the podcasts.
My first guest was awful.
I searched all the podcast apps. I couldn't find it. Never came up. Yeah, I don't know.
So for the new listeners, I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives way back, and Kevin was my first guest. And so that's what that joke was.
Alan had a podcast before I did.
YouTube channel, but yeah.
I won't give it to you.
It was going to be a podcast.
Well, I was going to be, but I'm not yet.
Used to be's, oughta be's, should be's, and could be's don't produce no honey.
Yeah, gonna be's.
And gonna be's.
Gonna be's also. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And as... excuse me. At NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Talk to you soon. Next Level Nation.